Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Age-Friendly Edmonton's Aging in Place Lunch and Learn, Driving Safely and Aging Gracefully. Safe driving requires an understanding of your body, your behavior, and the driving environment. Today, our presenter will discuss how to manage these elements to help avoid road mishaps and to continue to drive safely. She will talk about dealing with changes in our bodies, avoiding stressful driving situations, and dealing with challenging weather and road conditions. With more knowledge, you will have more confidence behind the wheel. Thank you for joining us by Zoom today. We are so happy to have you here. My name is Caroline G. I am the Age-Friendly Community Connector with the Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council. This event is brought to you by Age-Friendly Edmonton, an initiative of the Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council, supported by the City of Edmonton. Age-Friendly Edmonton is part of a global movement to build age-friendly cities and communities, and is a city that recognizes the diverse populations and needs of seniors and actively supports their inclusion, engagement, and well-being. Now, we want to honor those who came before us. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 and on the traditional lands of the Cree, Blackfoot, Iroquois, Dene, Nakota, Sioux, Métis, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe, Ojibwe nations. We acknowledge and respect the past, present, and future generations of all First Nations, Inuit, Métis people who continue to strengthen our community. Together, we call upon all of our collective honored traditions and spirits to work in building a great city for today and future generations. Now, we have a few housekeeping items before we get started on our presentation. Just trying to advance our Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Please keep muted for the duration of the presentation. If you'd like to access the live transcript, please do so by clicking on the live transcript button at the bottom of your toolbar. This presentation will also be recorded and can be viewed on the Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council YouTube channel. And I'll ask Megan to put the link in the chat for us. We will also be having a question and answer after the presentation. Please put your questions in the chat and we will do our best to get to all of them. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter today. Cathy Gladwin is a health promotions facilitator with Alberta Health Services Population Health Promotion Team. She holds a Master's of Science degree in health promotion and has over 25 years of injury experience. I also found out yesterday that Cathy owns a horse named Dylan and is an avid rider and also competes at different competitions around the province. So it's my pleasure to hand the following time to Cathy.
Thank you very much. Need one more click. Okay. Oop, that was 2 clicks. Great. So thank you, Caroline. I'm pleased to be here, and thank you for Age-Friendly Edmonton for inviting me. And the title of my presentation is Drive Safely, Age Gracefully. So as Caroline mentioned, I'm going to talk about things that will help you continue to drive and drive safely. And I've broken it down into 3 categories. One is about you and your body and your mind, your behavior, and the conditions that you're facing when you're driving. So first, about you. We'll talk about our body, our mind, and our knowledge. So the key points relating to our body that change as we age are our vision, our hearing, our flexibility, and our reactions. So as we age, it is important to have our annual eye exam to make sure that if we're wearing corrective lenses, we've got the best ones to use, the right prescription, that we don't have any eye diseases coming up, you know, and that all is good with our eyes. One of the issues that happens as we age, and it's the first change that is usually related to age, is a bit of diminishing of night vision. And you might notice this if you see, you know, the street lights kind of getting a halo around them, or if you notice more glare happening off of the road and things, that could mean that your vision is starting to change. So that's an indication to go and see if your optometrist can give you some help with that. And hearing also is important for driving. It might not seem to be as important, but we do gather a lot of information about what's going on outside of our field of vision by using our hearing. As we age, our hearing diminishes a bit over time, and you know, you might not notice it, but having a hearing check done can make sure that you have adequate hearing, and it might be the time to consider using hearing aids. And just like the hearing is important, it is important to actually, you know, use and have your hearing aids turned on appropriately while you're driving to collect that other information about things that are going on around you. Another thing that can diminish over time is our flexibility. And our flexibility is used when we need to do those shoulder checks, and doing the shoulder check while holding on to the steering wheel without moving the steering wheel. Sometimes if we're too stiff and we need to look back, then the tendency will be to turn the wheel, which is, of course, unsafe. So one thing you can do to help maintain your flexibility is just doing a seated side rotation on a daily basis. This includes putting your hand to your opposite hip and turning your head and shoulders and upper body, looking as far back as you can, and holding that for 5 to 10 seconds. Another tool that we can use is a blind spot mirror. So some vehicles have these already as part of their you know, the side view mirrors. But if it doesn't, this is just a little round mirror that sticks onto your existing outside mirror and can really help you get a better view of that blind spot. And you can get a pack of them for under $10. It's a good investment to help you see all around your car. So there are a number of things that can impact our reaction time. And of course, having good reactions is key to driving, to stopping, to avoiding obstacles that appear on the road. And so we'll talk about 3 things that can impact your reaction time. Medications is probably the number one medication. So it's important to know your medications and what side effects they might have. So blood pressure medication and sleep aids are two categories of medications that are commonly used that can impact your reaction time. If you are taking either of these two, check with your doctor to make sure that they are you're taking the right dose, that you still need to be taking them, and that you understand any restrictions that taking them might have. So if you've taken a sleep aid, you might not be able to drive in the few hours after that. So be sure to keep that in mind. Getting enough sleep is important to driving, especially when we're going on more lengthy trips, but really anytime, because it impacts our the speed that we can move our hands, our legs and our arms. So try and get the amount of sleep that you need to feel fresh and alert. We try and work on sleep hygiene to have good quality sleep. And before you go out on a trip, whether it be a short one or a long one, just check your alertness. Are you ready to drive? Or maybe you need to get your body revved up a bit by doing a bit of physical activity before driving. And then, of course, if we're on longer trips, be sure to take breaks. And if you're, doing a highway trip, you can look for interesting places to stop, and you might enjoy that as much as what you're doing at your destination. So we want to be eating and drinking appropriately so that our blood sugars don't get too low and so that we don't get dehydrated, because both of these things can cause a general fuzziness in our thinking. If you're heading out, be sure that you've eaten and that you have had some water to be sure that you're appropriately hydrated before you leave. I'm always amazed at how quickly my thinking can become foggy if I'm dehydrated. And as we age, we don't notice we don't notice that we're as thirsty, and it can creep up on us. And of course, avoiding alcohol before driving is a good idea, for maintaining your reaction time, because with every drink, even if you're remaining below the legal levels of alcohol, even that first drink can slow our reactions. Now your mind. How do you have a good mindset for driving? And the first thing is to be confident. If you are a confident driver, you're going to feel powerful behind the wheel. You're going to make good decisions. You're not going to be overwhelmed. But to do this, there are, kind of about three things that we should work on. One is to know your car. Cars now are very complicated as compared to what they were, and it's important to understand what all of the switches and buttons and lights do, and how to use your car and all the tools it might come with to help you drive the most safely. A second thing to be a confident driver is to refresh your knowledge. There's lots of new road signs and lights and rules that have been put in place probably since you last took a driving course. I know that when I was teaching my son to drive about 15 years ago, I was surprised by some of the new things I had to learn to teach him. And then, of course, practice these skills to be confident. So try to avoid having long breaks in time between your driving outings. Even if you might only use your car maybe once, you have a purpose to use it only once every second week, maybe you want to in between go out and just have a practice drive, just to make sure that you are still driving. I know that my aunt broke her wrist, and she wasn't able to drive for probably about 2.5 months. And she needed to take some short trips where she wasn't going on any challenging roads or in a hurry, just to get her confidence back behind the wheel. And there's a few things that we can do to keep our stress level lower when we're driving. Always, always allow lots of time. Plan your route. Make sure you know which, that you've looked at perhaps looked at a map if you're going somewhere new. But plan your route so that you know which corners you're going to have to make the turns at in advance, so that you can be in the proper lane to make the turns. And another way to lower your stress is to have rules for your passengers. Passengers can be helpful in navigating, but they must be calm about it. And as we often are in conversations with our passengers, it's good to set up before the trip an understanding with your passengers that when you are concentrating on either making those lane changes, the high-speed merges onto the freeway, or other challenging situations, that you need the passengers to stop talking, and that so that they're prepared for you to ask this and won't be upset by it. And also you won't be afraid to ask them to be quiet when you need to concentrate. And of course, patience is a virtue. People do things on the road that maybe we don't like, and they might be driving too fast or too slow, or they might not know where they are going, or they might not be well prepared for their trip, or people might be using their phones while driving. So there's nothing that you can really do to influence that person's behavior. And I would say that leaning on the horn is not particularly helpful in these situations. So just try and be patient, let the person go on their way, and be kind and share the road, and hope that others will do the same for you. So I talked a bit about knowing your car, and one of the controls that I find very confusing in the cars, and well, my car's 10 years old already, but I still, when I'm driving at night, I still see people who don't have their headlights on. And my thought about this is that in the old cars, if the headlights were off, then the dash lights were off, the dash was dark. And that was a pretty good indicator that if you can't see your dash, you need to turn on your headlights. Now, however, the dash lights are always on, and they adjust to, they have sensors that adjust them to the brightness of the light outside. And then the indicator that shows that the headlights are actually on is very small and kind of hidden in the upper corner of my dashboard. So be sure that you know whether your lights are on automatic and or if they are on or off. And that's one of the controls that I think we all need to update ourselves on. The newer cars also have a lot of seat adjustments, mirror adjustments, and steering wheel adjustments. So be sure that every time you get in the car, and if you share the car with someone else, this does become something that you might have to do every time you get in, is adjust the seat and adjust the gears, the mirrors rather, before you put that car in gear and head off. The steering wheels also move, and this is one that I find very difficult to do because you need to, in my vehicle anyway, you need to reach way down under the steering wheel and release a latch and then move the steering wheel and then re-engage the latch. But it can be done, and it makes you able to put the steering wheel in a position where you can see properly and where you can hold the wheel at the appropriate 10 and 2 position without straining your arms. So the rules of the road have changed over time as well. And so on the favorite routes to places that you go regularly, I would recommend that you take a trip when you've got lots of time and just look for all the things that may have changed. For example, the new speed limit in residential communities within Edmonton has been lowered to 40 kilometers an hour. And we were used to driving in where we didn't see a sign. That meant 50 kilometers an hour. Now we must go to 40. There are new signs, new types of signs. And in the downtown area, there are all the bike lanes. And that is very, very confusing. So if you need to travel in the downtown, be sure that the first time you're heading into that you have enough time to be able to observe all the bike lane signs, and that you are understanding when the cyclists have the right of way. And I would also say just to keep an eye out for cyclists, because even if you have the right of way, if you are in a collision with a person on a bicycle, well, you might win that collision, but you feel very badly about it. And cyclists don't always follow all the rules. So I have
cyclists don't always follow all the rules.
That's the case, they don't. So I have a picture here of the driver's guide, and this guide is available online, and they keep it up to date because this is what the new drivers learn when they're driving, and it goes over all of the signs, all of the new signs, it gives you tips on merging into high-speed traffic, all kinds of useful information. And again, this can be downloaded, and some registry offices might still have hard copies of it available. So who knows what this sign is? I know this one always, you know, what is this? Do I need to do up my zipper? What is going on here? But this is a sign that you'll see at intersections now, indicating that you have a free flow lane as you after you make a turn. So a lane has been added so that once you make the turn, you do not need to stop or yield to the traffic that is coming through the intersection. You just stay in your lane and maintain your direction. And if you need to change lanes, there will be a distance where you're not allowed to change lanes. So wait until you're back to the dotted line, and then you can change lanes if you need to. But if you stop when you're making a turn in a free flow lane, you might get a loud honk from someone behind you, or worse than that, they might not be expecting you to stop in this situation, and they might hit you from behind. And again, here is a bit about the bike lanes. And the City of Edmonton has a, on their website, if you go to the City of Edmonton website and look for bike routes, how to, they have a number of images like the one shown here that explains how to use the bike lanes and what to do. And again, if you need to brush up on how the bike lanes work before you're going into an area, they're mostly in the downtown right now, check this out. Another way to brush up on our driving skills is to have an in-car lesson. There are lots of driving schools out there that have courses directed at older adults to refresh on the in-car driving. There are also classes online that you can take advantage of, some for a fee, and the in-car lessons, there's usually a fee, but you might be able to find someone that's offering one for a low cost. Or another way to brush up on your skills is to just ask for feedback from someone who has learned to drive more recently. And I know with my son, I don't have to ask all that often. I just get the feedback, but I do take it to heart. If he says, "Mom, you're driving too slow," or something like that, I'll reassess what's happening and try and react. One thing about the in-car lessons to know is that they are not an assessment of your driving skill in such a manner that you can risk, losing your driver's license if you do badly. This is for improving your skills. So if you take an in-car driving lesson, you are not at risk of having them tell you you cannot drive. They will do everything they can to help you improve your driving. And another thing that plays in is driver behavior. So this is our behavior and our adherence to the rules, the choices that we make, and how and when we drive, and how we deal with the unexpected. So take a look at this cartoon where he says, "No, officer, I wasn't texting while driving." But how many other distractions can you spot in that picture? I can't imagine ever doing a crossword behind the wheel, but I am always having something to drink behind the wheel. Luckily, my dog is large. She's confined to the back, but I'm always surprised at how many people I will see driving with a little dog on their lap. I can't imagine anything that could be more distracting. So distractions to our driving fall into three categories. the visual, so things that we see, the manual, things that we try and do with our hands that aren't directly relating to driving, and the cognitive distractions. Cognitive distractions, and these distractions, the visual and the cognitive distractions, can come from either inside the car or outside the car. And in the summer months, a visual distraction for me is when I hear something buzzing in the car and I'm worried that it might be a bee or a wasp rather than just a fly. So that can be a visual distraction for me that I have to consciously think, if I want to look at that, I need to find a safe place to pull over and get rid of whatever that is. Manual distraction, if you might be reaching for something in the car, and again, pull off if you need to get something, the map, or if you say need a drink of water that you need to grab the cup for, consider where you can pull over before you do that. The cognitive distractions can be, as I pictured here, the large flashing neon or LED road signs that are out there. If you're driving in the evening or at night, boy, oh boy, they're just so bright that they can just draw your attention right away from your driving. So be conscious of this, and be sure that you are keeping the amount of attention on the road in front of you and what's going on with your driving, and you can find out whatever they're advertising another way. So just some ways that you can limit your distractions is by turning off that phone when you get in the car. We are so used to responding to our phones that we get a bit panicky if we can't pick it up and answer it right away. But you do know that your phone will always take a message and you can check it when you get to your destination, but you'll lower your stress level and limit the distraction and the temptation to pick up your phone when you receive a call or a text if it is off and out of reach. Try and keep two hands on the wheels most of the time. You might need to adjust the radio, the temperature, something like that. But try and look for places in your driving where there is less going on around you, when it's a calm spot of driving, before you do things like adjusting the radio or turning up the heat or the air conditioning. And I mentioned about conversations as well with your passengers, and in general, try and limit your conversations and avoid speaking about something that's emotional or argumentative, because that can really raise your emotions and that can be an added distraction. And of course, rules of the road. I talked about how you need to know them and the new ones, but then once you know them, you gotta follow them too. We all have a role to play in sharing our roads to make them safe for all users. So do your part, even if those around you are not. And there are things that we can do if we find ourselves in situations where we recognize that some situations where we're no longer confident in driving, or our physical abilities, maybe our eyesight in dim light, or we find ourselves being blinded more so by the sunlight. There are times when we'll need to make alternative choices about how we're going to travel. And 4 of them that I've mentioned here are getting a ride with friends or family, taking a taxi or an Uber, using the bus, or if it's a trip in your neighborhood, maybe you can just do it by walking. But think about what situations, try and anticipate what situations you might find in a trip, and if you feel it's necessary, look for an alternative. Now, sometimes when you're driving, you might be surprised by something that's happening in front of you. There might suddenly be construction that's obstructing you, or you might be in the wrong lane and not be able to make that turn that you had planned on. I always advise the best thing to do is to just drive on. You can come back to that corner or go make a detour to come back around the construction, but don't make an abrupt decision. Drive on, pull over safely, pull into a parking lot if you need to, and figure out how you're going to get back to on the route that you had been planning to use. And defensive driving is also a technique for seeing the unexpected and dealing with it. So the 3 key defensive driving components are leaving enough space around you so that you have time to react, but not leaving so much space that someone is going to try and cut in front of you. So leave an appropriate amount of space, a couple of car lengths behind the car, and leave more space the faster you are going. Be sure to be scanning the environment as you're driving, looking from side to side and seeing what is around. And it can also be helpful to have a running commentary going in your head, or speaking out loud, which is a technique that we use when teaching young people how to drive. You'll have them say, "Oh, I see ahead that car is stopped. I'm going to slow down. Now there's the corner that I need to turn at. I'm going to move into the right-hand lane and slow down and put on my signal to prepare for that turn." Talking out loud like that can help you recognize the small tasks that you need to do to remain driving safely. And finally, I'll talk about the conditions that we have to deal with. Oh, that picture is darn scary and hard to believe that we ever have that after having such a great warm summer we have. But conditions such as lighting, the weather, and the traffic conditions are things we have to deal with. When I was speaking about eyesight, I talked a bit about lighting, about how the lighting can affect our driving, the darkness. In the fall and spring, driving at dusk and dawn, when that sun is so long on the horizon, you might be shining straight in your eyes. You might want to, you want to be sure that you've got sunglasses to help you, and you might just want to put off that trip for a few minutes until the sun is in a more appropriate place for you. Snow and ice will be there, and reducing our speed and recognizing that stopping takes longer time and distance in the snow. Rain can also be make the roads more slippery, especially if it hasn't rained in a while, and there's kind of an accumulation of I think it's tire crumble and vehicle fluids that get on the road. And when it first starts to rain, it can make the road incredibly slippery, more slippery than you'd expect. And of course, fog is another problem that you probably just have to wait out. For our for traffic, of course, it changes based on the timing. So if at all possible, if you don't want to put up with the traffic, then try to time your trips for the lower traffic times outside of the rush hour. Unfortunately, in Edmonton, the rush hours are getting longer as we get more people on the roads, and now that in the fall that everyone is back to work after holidays, try and avoid those places where either there's going to be traffic tie-ups or avoid the time altogether. Remember that the school zones, the kids are back in school, and that we have to travel at only 30 kilometers an hour in a school zone. So if your trip takes you through a school zone, there's likely to be lots of slow moving traffic that can impede you. Another issue, another way to watch out is to use the traffic apps on your maps on your phone to show you where there might be congestion, and other reports as well that might be road closures, so that doesn't throw you off. Aggressive drivers. When the traffic is busy, people who are in a hurry become more aggressive. So again, as I mentioned, back to how we deal with the situations, we stay calm, let the aggressive drivers have the road, and recognize that we have we have a right to drive, but we also have the obligation to share the road with the drivers in whatever quality they come. And of course, be sure when the traffic is heavy to avoid distractions. So there I have gone over things that deal with you and your body, your behavior, and the conditions. And I hope that some of these things that I've spoken about will help you maintain your driving and help you continue driving safely in the future. Thank you very much. There are two QR codes here. One that has the driver's guide to download that I mentioned, and the other one has the link to the Edmonton bicycle lane information. And that concludes my presentation.
I guess I should unmute myself first before I start speaking.
Please do.
Well, thank you very much, Cathy. That was an excellent presentation, and just so important for our independence and maintaining our mobility. And as promised, we would have a short question and answer period at the conclusion of your presentation. And we do have a couple in the chat already, so maybe we'll just start with that. Mildred has a question, and she was wondering whether there are any aids or any tools that can be used if you were to be driving, or if you had to drive with one hand. So maybe you have an injury of some sort, and are there tools out there that would aid in that?
Yes, there are. And I believe an occupational therapist is who you would need to talk to about advising you on how to do that. So if you can be directed towards an occupational therapist by your family physician, and also if you have an injury, get your family physician's approval, before getting behind the wheel. And if they think it's appropriate for you, they'll put you in contact with an OT that can set you up with things that will help you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. And if you have any, if there are any other questions, if you can put them in the chat. I have one question for you. One of the newest things that you hear about in the news is a thing called zipper merging. And so there's a lot of confusion around that. Can you talk a little bit about what a zipper merge is and how it will help in terms of the flow of traffic?
Yes, that's a good question. So during the summer in Edmonton, aka construction season, we have lots of roadways that are narrowed down to from multiple lanes to a single lane. So when you're going down from 2 lanes to 1 lane of traffic, it might seem reasonable to try and get into the proper lane in advance. But there's a whole group of traffic engineers who work out there, and they've done research that shows that if both lanes fill up, and then at the front of the lane, people alternate their going into the single lane, that is the fastest way to get everyone past that point where the lanes converge. One of the keys to doing this is, as you pull up to the front, look to the person that's in the other lane, try and make eye contact to be sure that they are following the same alternation of vehicles that you are, and progress that way. But that's a bit different than we did in the past by trying to get into 1 lane as far back from the point as possible. Fill both lanes and then go in like zippers.
Great, excellent. Thank you, Cathy. Mildred put in the chat, and Mildred, you may want to unmute yourself, and I'm not sure about this question. If you can give us a little bit more context. It says here, what make of car do you drive, year of car, etc. Mildred, if you're there, if you wouldn't mind elaborating on your question, that would be great.
Sure. Well, she mentioned her car several times about some of its features, and I just want to be sure not to buy that make.
Well, I drive a 2012 Honda CR-V.
Okay.
But I don't know, like about the lights and things. It is something that has evolved in all makes. All of the Japanese makes are very, very similar. And once you understand a Honda, you'll understand a Toyota and a Kia and Hyundai. And the North American brands usually have slightly different ways of operating things, but they are all similar. But it is, I'm sure you've seen the operator's manual, which is not a fun read. But if you are uncertain about anything in your car, that's where the information is, and you can talk to the car dealer if you're uncertain, and they can help you figure out how to use it in the best way possible.
Thank you.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you for your question, Mildred. I have one other question for you regarding all-season tires. I'm a great proponent of winter tires, and I know people talk about, oh, I have all seasons, that's good enough.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of good tires?
So probably since, the radial, all season radials in the 1970s, those became the ultimate tire. But now we're finding that in the conditions that we have in Edmonton, we should only consider all season to be 3 season. Winter tires come with 2 benefits. One is they have a tread that can help in the snow, but of course in Edmonton we don't often have lots of snow, but what we do have is cold and frozen roads. The all-season tires become too stiff and you lose your grip on the road. And as the snow tires, the old style snow tires just had the big tread, but now if you look on a tire, you will see if it's indicated for snow, but there's a new category that they rate them in, and this is called all weather. So you'll find all season tires for sale, all weather, and winter. I, for many years, used all weather tires, and I found them to be, when I switched to them, I found them to be very much different in the amount of distance that it took me to stop on cold, on icy roads for sure, but even on a very cold road, it gave me much better braking ability. I have now gone to where I have a winter tire, which has a bit more of a snow tread on it, because I am a skier, and when there's fresh snow, I want to be out there. But you do need to change them from, change them seasonally, and try and get it done before the first snowfall, or before the temperature, the temperature of the surface of the road is going to drop below 7 degrees Celsius. That's when you start getting an advantage from the winter tires. Because if you leave the winter tires on all summer, you'll have probably a noisy ride, but they'll also wear down very quickly, and then you're looking at buying a new set of tires before you really need to. So it is good to change from winter tires, or go with an all-weather tire.
Great. Thank you for that, Cathy. We have a couple of minutes left. I don't see any other questions in the chat at the moment. If you think of any other questions, this is your chance now. I don't see anybody else. Any other questions? Okay, going once, twice, 3 times. All right. Well, thank you very much, Cathy. And I'm just going to conclude our session this afternoon. I just want to gonna pop up our final PowerPoint slide here, and thank everybody for joining us today. If you do think of any other questions after our presentation today, please feel free to send me an email at agefriendly@seniorscouncil.net. You don't have to remember that. I'll ask Megan just to pop that into the chat, and feel free to send any questions to me. I will do my best to answer them. If I can't answer the question, I will forward your email to Cathy, and Cathy is happy to answer our questions. Also, in your inbox, I will also be sending you a short survey about this event. And just want to thank you for taking the time in advance to completing it. It just helps us to planned for future lunch and learn topics. Now, our next Age-Friendly Edmonton Lunch and Learn is scheduled for Wednesday, October 19th from noon to 1 p.m. All of our Age-Friendly Lunch and Learns occur the third Wednesday of the month. The topic of discussion will be on ageism and intergenerational perspective. So that should be a lively discussion, and hope that you can join us. Look for more information on ESCC's website, subscribe to our link letter, or follow us on social media. And I put a link in there where you can find more information on future lunch and learns. And again, I'll ask my friend Megan to put the link into the chat so that you have it for future reference. All right, I'm just gonna check. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much for joining us today, and have a wonderful day and safe driving.
Thank you very much for having me, Caroline. I really appreciate it.
Great, thanks, Cathy.